The sharp crack of a finger snap sliced through the marble lobby like a whip. Every head snapped around. In a single breath, the five-star hotel's elegant atmosphere twisted into a stage for a raw public insult. Marcus Reed, 40 years old, dressed in a black suit sharp enough to look carved from the night itself, froze mid-step. He hadn't even finished glancing at the directory before the source of the commotion appeared. Kelly Parker, 45. The hotel's general manager strode forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to ordering the world around. Blonde hair, pulled tight eyes, cold lips curled in disdain. She pointed directly toward the employee entrance. "You can't be standing here. Staff entry is over there. Move." The words cut through the room like a blade, slicing straight through conversations and straight into the dignity of the man standing calmly, politely, with no understanding of why he was being treated like an intruder. Marcus blinked, once slow steady. He inhaled softly. The Rolex on his wrist caught the golden lobby lights glittering like a silent, mocking reminder of how absurd this moment truly was. He had weathered hundreds of negotiations, dozens of corporate crises, but nothing quite like this being treated as if he didn't belong simply because of the color of his skin. Nearby, a cluster of white businessmen at the bar fell silent mid-sentence. One stole a glance at Marcus. Another shook his head, confused. A few lifted their phones instinctively because, in this era, witnessing wasn't enough, you had to record. Marcus kept his voice low and polite. "Ma'am, I'm here for the Summit Dynamics Leadership Conference in the Skyline Room. There must be some misunderstanding." Kelly let out a sharp, hollow laugh, the kind that sounded rehearsed. She turned to the crowd, raising her voice, half a pitch like she was performing. "Did you all hear that he thinks he's here for a board leadership meeting?" A few uneasy chuckles bubbled up, not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do in the face of such blatant arrogance. A cold sting crept up Marcus's spine. He wasn't angry, and he wasn't shocked, just chilled, tightened by the familiar ache of a successful black man walking into a space where some people still refused to believe he belonged. Heavy footsteps approached from behind. Frank Miller, 38, the hotel security guard, appeared with his hand hovering near his radio. "Is there an issue, Ms. Parker?" "Yes," Kelly snapped. "He's causing trouble and trying to access a restricted executive area." The phrase "he's causing trouble" shrank the room landing like an accusation, shouted through a megaphone. Marcus turned toward Frank, meeting his eyes with calm, not defiance, not fear, just the steady patience of a man who had spent a lifetime forced to make other people comfortable. "There must be a misunderstanding," Marcus said. "I have business here." Frank's expression didn't shift. "So you can leave on your own, or this becomes complicated." It wasn't a threat. It was a statement from someone following orders. Marcus's heartbeat slowed. He glanced at his watch. 2:06 in the afternoon. 54 minutes until the meeting he was leading, the most important meeting of the quarter, the meeting where he was the one in charge, the one making the final decisions. His entire career had been built on staying composed when others lost control. Yet here he was in the middle of a spectacle no one realized they were making in front of the very man they were supposed to respect. Across the lobby, a young woman, 25-year-old Jasmine Cole, quietly lifted her phone and opened Instagram Live. The light from the screen reflected her resolve. She had seen scenes like this too many times. Silence, she knew, was participation. Livestream started, she whispered, typing the title, "Hotel Manager Discriminates Against Black Businessman." The viewer count jumped from 3 to 12, then 48, then 102 in seconds. Comments poured in. "What's happening? Which hotel is this? Oh no, what are they doing?" Kelly still didn't notice the growing crowd or the shifting moral weight pressing onto her shoulders. She stepped closer to Marcus, close enough that the tension in her jaw was visible. "I run this hotel," she said, drunk on her imagined authority, "and I know exactly who belongs here." A tight ache hit Marcus's chest, not because of what she said, but because of what she believed. A warm, trembling voice came from the elevator area. "Dear, what is going on here?" Evelyn Carter, 72, small in frame but sharp as tempered steel, walked toward them. She looked at Marcus, then at Kelly. Kelly folded her arms. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you." "It does," Evelyn replied, her voice fragile yet unwavering. "Because I'm watching something shameful happen in a place that should know better." The word sent a soft ripple across the lobby. A few guests nodded quietly. Jasmine adjusted her camera angle, making sure Kelly's face was centered. The viewer count hit 300. And rising. Fast. Near the corner, assistant manager Ethan Morris watched the unfolding scene with his stomach twisting. He had sat through the corporate anti-bias training videos. And this was those videos brought to life, word for word, attitude for attitude. He stepped forward, tugging Kelly's sleeve lightly. "Kelly, don't escalate this. Let me check the gentleman's information." "No," Kelly snapped, jerking away. "I can handle it." Silence fell like a weighted curtain. Heavy, suffocating. For the first time, disappointment crept into Marcus's chest, subtle but sharp. He was used to suspicion, used to people doubting him. But no one ever got used to being humiliated. He closed his eyes for half a second, then opened them, decision settling in like iron. The scene wasn't over. But the lead role wouldn't belong to Kelly much longer. Marcus locked eyes with the woman who had disrespected him from the start. "Miss Parker," he said, his voice low, but steady. "Would you like to know who I am?" The lobby held its breath. Kelly raised an eyebrow, smirking. "I don't need to know," she said. "I just need you to leave my lobby." The live stream hit 800 viewers and was still exploding, but none of it compared to the truth that was about to break open, only moments away. Notification pings erupted non-stop from the inside of Jasmine's jacket pocket. Her live stream was climbing like a crisis chart. 1,200 viewers, then 1,900, then 2,700, watching in real time. The full weight of the internet was converging on a single point, a 5-star hotel lobby, a white manager barking orders, and a polished black businessman being treated like he didn't belong. No one yet realized the scene unfolding before them was about to define careers and possibly reshape an entire industry. Kelly still hadn't grasped that she was standing in the eye of a storm. All she saw was that Marcus was too calm, too silent, too unwilling to submit. His composure didn't soothe her. It irritated her, as if his restraint itself was a challenge to her authority. Frank Kelly ordered, "If he doesn't leave in 10 seconds, call the police." Frank's face paled. The crowd around them murmured in disapproval. A young woman in a blue suit whispered to her friend, "Honestly, he's dressed better than half the guests here." Her friend nodded, voice low but firm. "Doing this publicly, this is dangerous." Emotions rippled through the lobby. Confusion, discomfort, outrage, disbelief. But the clearest emotion belonged to Marcus. He wasn't angry and he wasn't flustered. What he felt was a bone-deep exhaustion, the kind that settles in after years of having to prove your worth in places where others are simply assumed to belong. His phone buzzed. A message from Daniel Price read, "The entire board is here. I can come down if you need backup." Marcus responded immediately. "No need. Start the meeting on time." He slipped the phone away, lifted his head, and looked at Kelly again. In his eyes was the unmistakable calm of a man who understood that real power lived in silence, not in shouting. Kelly saw none of that. She only saw someone refusing to comply. "So you want to make this difficult fine?" She snatched the radio from Frank's belt. "I'm calling the Polly Kelly Parker." The voice sliced through the air like a blade, and the entire lobby froze. Laura Whitman stood at the end of the hallway, tall and commanding, in a charcoal grey blazer. Her eyes swept across the scene, as if taking inventory of a disaster she wished had never touched her property. Kelly went pale. Frank straightened like a soldier snapped to attention. Laura approached each step, waited with the authority of someone who had overseen dozens of hotels and handled hundreds of crises, but had never seen one that smelled this strongly of trouble. As she drew close enough to see Marcus clearly, she paused for half a second. Recognition flickered across her face, faint but unmistakable. "What exactly is happening here?" Laura asked, her voice low and dangerous. Kelly swallowed hard, scrambling to recover. I'm handling an individual trespassing in the executive area." Trespassing Laura raised an eyebrow. "I see a guest surrounded by staff." "He is not a guest," Kelly blurted, grasping at the nearest excuse. "He claims he's here for the Summit Dynamics board meeting. But he has no badge, no paperwork, and he doesn't look like it." The last sentence slipped out too fast, too natural, too revealing. Laura turned her head sharply toward Kelly, her eyes frozen steel. "Doesn't look like what exactly?" The question hit like a dropped anvil. Kelly stumbled back, half a step, mouth opening and closing, like a short-circuited machine. Before she could invent a lie, Jasmine zoomed her camera straight onto Kelly's face livestream, now over 3,000 viewers. A comment popped up instantly. "She's about to lose her job." Beside them, Evelyn Carter spoke up, voice steady. "I've been here since the beginning. This young man did nothing wrong. The person in the wrong is that manager. She treated him like he wasn't even human." Kelly's face burned red. Frank stared at the floor. Ethan bit his lips so hard he looked like he wanted to melt into the wall. Laura inhaled slowly and turned to Marcus. "Sir, I am Laura Whitman, Regional Director. May I ask what led to this?" Marcus looked at her with eyes dark and steady, so calm it was unsettling. "Just a small misunderstanding. I was trying to get to the boardroom for the meeting I'm scheduled to lead." The lobby stopped breathing. Ethan dropped his pen. Kelly snapped her head up, eyes wide. The board meeting of what company, Laura asked, though her voice had gone soft with nerves she could no longer hide. "Summit Dynamics," Marcus replied. The meeting at 3 o'clock. The name Summit Dynamics struck Laura like a blast of electricity. A multi-billion-dollar company, the most important client, they had the largest contract on their books. Today, the contract renewal date. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant popped up, CEO Summit Dynamics, Marcus J. Reed. "In Chicago today, for contract renewal." Laura looked back at Marcus. Really looked. His features, his posture, his absolute composure. A chilling silence rolled across the lobby. "Mr. Reed," Laura said slowly, each word trembling under its own weight, "are you the Chief Executive Officer of Summit Dynamics?" Marcus gave a small, quiet smile, the smile of a man who had been waiting for this moment since the first insult. "Yes." "I am." The lobby exploded with gasps. A man nearly dropped his wine glass. Two young women covered their mouths. Evelyn exhaled sharply, pride lighting her entire face. Kelly stood, frozen, drained of all color. No, he's lying." Jasmine swung the camera straight at Kelly's expression. New comments flooded in. "Oh my God, he is the CEO. This twist is insane. That manager is done." Laura locked eyes with Kelly. Her next question fell like a guillotine. "The Summit Dynamics contract. What is it worth? 10.2 million a year," Kelly whispered. "Renewal date today." A choked sound escaped Kelly's throat. The crowd was stunned. Frank stared at his shoes. Ethan covered his face with his hands. The entire lobby felt like it was watching a bridge collapse in slow motion and was powerless to look away. In the center of that silence, Marcus felt his heart sink, not from satisfaction, but from a deeper sorrow. How many more times, he wondered, would people who looked like him have to prove they belonged in the very rooms they were leading? He gave Kelly one final look. His eyes held no anger, no malice, only a quiet question that weighed heavier than any accusation. "Why did you think I couldn't be the one in charge here? The live stream passed 4,000 viewers, and no one knew this story was far from over. The journey to change a system and the people inside it had only just begun." The atmosphere in the lobby felt like a thin sheet of glass that had just been struck, not shattered, but trembling to the point of suffocation. Everyone stood still. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. And in that fragile silence, Kelly's phone buzzed violently inside her pocket. A warning from the hotel's media monitoring system flashed across the screen. Harborview Crown is experiencing abnormal surges in public discussion. She didn't dare open it. Laura took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the folder in her hand. She understood that the consequences of this moment would not remain inside these four walls. They would ripple outward to headquarters, to the press, to shareholders, to every major partner. The entire hospitality industry would look at this incident and form a conclusion how Harborview Crown treated a guest when they didn't know who he was. And at the center of that storm, Marcus still stood tall, like the calm eye of a vortex he had learned to navigate all his life. He had dealt with suspicious looks from people who had no idea he was a chief executive. But he never expected something like this to unfold right before the most important meeting of the year. Marcus looked at Laura. "I believe this could have been handled professionally. I gave Kelly 4 opportunities to ask for clarification, 4 chances to ask who I was, 4 chances to correct her approach. But she chose assumption over inquiry, suspicion over listening, and more importantly, she chose bias over truth." Kelly clenched her fists so tightly, her nails turned her palms white. A tremor ran up her wrist. She couldn't speak, couldn't understand how it escalated this far, and couldn't think of a single excuse because everyone in the lobby had seen and heard everything. Laura steadied her voice. "Mr. Reed, I sincerely apologize for what has happened. But I need to ask from a procedural standpoint. Kelly, why did you decide this was trespassing?" Kelly swallowed hard. Because he didn't have a badge. And he didn't look like someone attending a board meeting. Marcus lifted his chin. Didn't look like Kelly opened her mouth to correct herself, but the words had already shot into the air like an arrow impossible to retract. It was the unfiltered truth of her assumption. A heavy sigh broke through the lobby. Evelyn Carter frowned and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Young lady, do you realize what you just admitted? You proved the entire issue was about his skin color, not your procedures, Jasmine's live stream shot past 6,000 viewers. Comments began shifting from outrage to shock. She really just said that out loud. She literally said, "Didn't look like, oh my God, this CEO is so calm, I'm shaking for him. This is why we need live streams." Ethan Morris, the only manager with a conscience left, stepped forward, half wanting to shield Marcus if things escalated. But he stopped halfway, hand trembling. He knew that stepping in now would make Kelly see him as a traitor. But staying silent meant enabling wrongdoing. Kelly Ethan whispered, "You need to stop. This is getting worse every minute." "Be quiet," Kelly snapped. "I know exactly what I'm doing." No, she didn't. And everyone could see it. Marcus looked at Kelly, and in that moment he saw what so many leaders of color experienced daily fear. Not his fear, theirs. Kelly feared losing control, feared that the man before her didn't match her mental image of a chief executive, feared facing the truth of her own mistake. Laura stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and Kelly like a dividing line. "Kelly, let me ask, plainly, did you request identification from Mr. Reed? An invitation letter? An email, confirmation, or anything at all before deciding he did not belong here?" Kelly choked on the answer. "I did not." Why not? Kelly couldn't respond. The entire lobby watched her, the way people watch a door hanging off its hinges. Marcus tightened his grip on his briefcase before setting it gently on the floor. He opened it with 2 fingers. The click of the lock snapped crisply through the stillness. He flipped open a folder, revealing the silver-embossed Summit Dynamics logo and official documents stamped with corporate seals. Kelly swallowed hard. A bead of sweat slid down her temple. She stared at the papers, at the large printed words, "Confidential board materials," and her heart dropped to her feet. For a brief, desperate moment, she clung to one last hope. Those documents could be fake. Marcus closed the case with quiet finality, his expression unshakable. "Do you truly believe that the gentle question sliced deeper than anger ever could?" Not because of his tone, but because she knew she had no justification left. A man standing near the bar finally spoke up. "Mr. Reed, may I ask, are you planning to report this to the corporation?" Marcus held his gaze for a moment. "My corporation is already aware." A collective gasp rippled across the room. The lobby seemed to explode out of its earlier silence. Jasmine inhaled sharply as her viewer count soared past 10,000. New comments poured in. "This is definitely hitting the news. If they treat a CEO like this, what happens to regular people? This live stream is insane. Someone call a news network already." Kelly trembled, scrambling for any scrap of authority she had left. Fine, let me call the boardroom, verify him." Marcus cut her off in a voice so calm it sent a chill through the air. "No need. I just came from that boardroom. The board members are waiting for me to return." The words sent Kelly's world plunging off a cliff. From the elevator area, another guest in a charcoal suit stepped forward. He raised his voice. "If this hotel treats the chief executive of Summit Dynamics like this, my company will be booking our events elsewhere." A chain reaction sparked through the lobby like falling dominoes. 2 businessmen exchanged glances and nodded. A group near the entrance whispered, "If this goes public, Harborview is finished." At that moment, Laura's phone vibrated a call from Harborview Hospitality Group headquarters, the regional executive director. She looked at Kelly's face, then at Marcus. The path ahead split in 2. One direction, a nationwide crisis lawsuit's loss of their biggest annual contract. The other, a narrow chance to salvage dignity finances and the integrity of the entire system. and the person holding the key was Marcus Reed, the man standing before them, calm to a terrifying degree. "This situation," Laura lowered her voice, sincere and shaken, "is clearly more than a simple mistake. Mr. Reed, how would you like this?" Handled Marcus scanned the lobby, taking in every watching face, every phone recording, every breath held in the air. He didn't want revenge. He didn't want to humiliate Kelly before thousands of people. He wanted change to the very thing that allowed this moment to happen. And he knew that to change a system, sometimes one had to seize the right moment, the moment when every eye was open, when every ear was listening, when truth could not be swallowed or spun away. Marcus breathed in. "This," he said slowly, "will not end the way you expect. I will make that clear in a few minutes." The lobby fell silent, deeper than before. The live stream passed 15,000 viewers. A new storm was forming, and this time Marcus was the one leading it. Laura still held her phone in her hand, but no one paid attention to the vibration anymore. Every person in the lobby was pulled into the tense stillness, stretched thin like a drumhead, every gaze locked on Marcus, waiting for what he would say next. Jasmine's live stream surged past 18,000 viewers. Comments blurred so fast they became unreadable. Frank glanced at Kelly and saw her lips trembling. Ethan stood nearby, looking like a man watching a building he had spent 10 years working in begin to crack at its foundation. Marcus bent down, picked up his leather briefcase, and unlocked it with a motion so smooth it belonged to someone who had done it 1,000 times. But to the crowd, the sharp click echoed like a gunshot. He opened the case fully this time, rotating it so Kelly and Laura could clearly see the contents: official Summit Dynamics documents, sealed envelopes, a leather-bound portfolio, a printed board meeting schedule. Laura recognized it instantly. Only high-level insiders could access materials like these. Kelly stepped back, completely raising a hand to her mouth. This was no longer rumor or misunderstanding. This was undeniable proof. "Mr. Reed," Laura began her voice. "Ruff, please allow me to confirm one thing. Is today the 5-year renewal date for the contract between Summit Dynamics and Harborview Hospitality Group?" Marcus nodded calmly. "Yes, it is." Kelly almost collapsed, but the hardest blow had not yet landed. Marcus continued, his voice steady, and even as if delivering a keynote address. "The renewal proposal was finalized. I brought the original with me for signature after today's board meeting. This is the official copy." He withdrew a thick, dark blue folder and placed it on the reception desk. The Summit Dynamics logo gleamed at the center. Kelly stared at the document, despair flooding her expression. She recognized the printed section, labeled Service Provider Representative, showing the updated name, Harborview Crown, and below on the signature line, reserved for the hotel's representative, her name, Kelly Parker. She stuttered, barely able to speak. "I was assigned to sign this contract today." Laura turned slowly, her eyes cold as forged steel. "Yes. And you just destroyed everything." A collective gasp rippled across the crowd. Evelyn placed a hand over her chest, shaking her head. "Child, you just threw away $10 million a year." Guests whispered, some tapping each other's shoulders in disbelief, stunned as if they were watching a movie scene that was far too real. Marcus closed the briefcase with a decisive motion. Clear message, this was only the beginning. Laura moved closer to Kelly, voice low enough to feel like a whisper, but sharp enough to slice through the entire lobby. "Do you know how many employees this contract supports? Do you know Summit Dynamics is our largest client? Or did you only see the color of a guest's skin when they walked in? Kelly's breath hitched. A fragile explanation crawled out of her throat. I was just following protocol. I thought Marcus said. Voice soft, but cutting like a blade is what people say when they want to avoid owning the bias behind their actions. Kelly stared at the floor hands, tightening into fists, as if she could crush the consequences closing in on her. At that moment, Marcus's phone vibrated. He lifted it. A message from Daniel the board is asking whether to delay the meeting. The hall is ready. Laura saw the text on his screen, her face drained of color. "Mr. Reed," she said, voice trembling with worry, "please give us a chance to explain." Marcus lifted his hand just slightly, enough to silence the entire lobby. "I came here to finalize a contract," he said. "A contract I fought to keep for 2 years against multiple competing hotel chains. I came in good faith with respect." He turned and looked directly at Kelly. "But when I walked into this place, the first thing I was treated as was an intruder." A soft sob escaped from the left side of the lobby. A female guest wiped her eyes, not because she pitied Marcus, but because she finally saw the raw truth she had ignored too many times. Marcus continued, "And I want everyone here to understand something. I do not care who Kelly thought I was. I care that she believed I could not be the person with authority in a place like this. That is not a mistake. That is a system." The words dropped like a verdict over the entire service industry. Jasmine zoomed in. Viewer count jumped past 25,000. Comments shifted from outrage to something deeper. This needs to be taught in every training program. It's not just Kelly. Their whole system is broken. I'm actually crying right now. Meanwhile, Kelly stepped back, like a person cornered by consequences she could no longer outrun. "I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were." "Exactly," Marcus replied. "And that is the problem. Not because he was a chief executive, but because she never gave him the basic chance to be treated as a human being." Laura turned back to Marcus, wearing the expression of someone who understood the gravity, had surpassed the boundaries of the hotel. "Mr. Reed, I have worked in this industry for 20 years. I have never seen an error this severe. But please tell us how you want to proceed. We can convene immediately, take disciplinary action at once." Marcus shook his head. "No," he said. "I am not looking for punishment. I am looking for change." The entire lobby lifted their heads. Jasmine whispered into the live stream, This isn't just about discrimination anymore. This is the beginning of something bigger." Marcus picked up his briefcase, held it in his left hand, and spoke slowly, but with full authority. "I'll explain what I want. But not here. Bring the entire management team downstairs, and prepare the Windsor room behind the lobby. We need to speak directly before I return to the board." Laura nodded so quickly it was almost a bow. "I'll arrange it immediately." Kelly stumbled back another step, her voice cracking. Will you give me a chance?" Please. Marcus looked at her. His gaze held no hatred, only something she had never expected to confront, accountability. "A chance does not come from me," he said. "A chance comes from whether you are ready to change." Kelly broke into tears. Jasmine zoomed in on her face. The live stream exceeded 30,000 viewers. No one in the lobby knew that what Marcus was about to present just minutes from now would not be a conversation. Not a warning, but a blueprint to transform an entire system. A blueprint Summit Dynamics had prepared long ago, and Kelly Parker would be the very first to step into that program. The Windsor meeting room sat near the end of the ground floor corridor, usually reserved for private hotel management meetings. But when Marcus stepped inside, the atmosphere felt more like a courtroom. Laura stood at the head of the table, her face so tense that the fine lines at her temples stood out more than usual. Ethan sat to her left, his fingers interlocked so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Frank stood pressed against the wall, shoulders hunched as if he wished he could disappear into it. Kelly sat low in a chair at the far end of the table, eyes red mascara smeared like a stamp, certifying the end of a very long day. Marcus entered with the same steady composure as before. The door closed behind him, sealing off the chaos still boiling in the lobby and the live stream of more than 30,000 people erupting outside. In this room, the silence had a different shape. It was the calm before a storm, the kind of stillness that existed only to make way for something much larger about to hit. Laura spoke first, her voice unsteady. "Mr. Reed, on behalf of Harborview Hospitality Group, I apologize. We are prepared to do whatever it takes to correct this mistake." Marcus set his briefcase on the table, locked eyes with Laura for a few seconds, then looked at each person in turn. His gaze lingered on Kelly the longest. There was no blame in it, no contempt, only a stark truth. In her he had not seen pure malice, but the kind of unconscious harm the entire society was paying for every single day. "I am not interested in financial compensation," Marcus said, his voice warm but edged with steel. "I am not asking for anyone to be fired. I am not looking to create new victims. I want change." Ethan looked up. Frank blinked. Laura frowned slightly. Kelly lowered her head again, fingers digging into each other. Marcus opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents with a dark blue cover embossed with the Summit Dynamics seal. The title on the first page made Laura's jaw drop: Summit Dynamics Service Transformation and Guest Dignity Plan Draft. Marcus slid the packet toward Laura. "This is the draft of the reform program I asked our legal team to prepare 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks ago, Laura stammered. "So that means Summit Dynamics is not simply reacting to today's incident." Marcus replied, "We have been preparing to require our partners to raise their service standards, especially regarding discrimination." Kelly lifted her head, eyes full of panic. If he had already prepared this program, then what happened today was not a random flare-up. It was the match that set fire to the tower she was standing beneath. Laura turned the first page. In large, clear lines, she read 1 monthly unconscious bias training for all staff, 2, an anonymous discrimination reporting system, 3 guest experience evaluations from minority perspectives, 4 independent quarterly audits, 5 diversity metrics added to management bonus performance indicators, 6 restorative practice obligations for staff who violate policy. Ethan exhaled sharply. Frank swallowed hard. Kelly almost curled into herself. Laura flipped to page 3 and froze. 90-day immersion program for managers who violate policy, Marcus spoke up. "That section is for Kelly." The room went completely silent. The faint clicking of keyboards from the lobby echoed far in the distance. Kelly bit her lip until it bled. She tried to keep her voice steady, but failed. You want me to go through this program?" "No," Marcus said. "I want you to become an example." Kelly flinched. I am not a bad person. You do not know where you went wrong," Marcus said gently, though his eyes could not hide his disappointment. "That is exactly why you need this program." Laura set the documents down and drew a deep breath. "Mr. Reed, the cost of this training, the entire reform program will be substantial." Marcus looked directly at her, his tone as level and firm as a verdict. The exact cost is $340,000 per year. That is 3.3% of the value of our contract. The room went still. That number was no accident. It was strategy. Marcus continued. If a partner earns more than $10 million a year from a contract with Summit Dynamics, then investing 3% of that into ensuring our clients are treated with dignity is reasonable. Laura nodded, realizing this was more than a calculation. It was an ethical test. I am willing to agree, she said. But I need to know your final condition. Marcus took out his phone. The screen lit up with a new message from Daniel Lakeside Regency. Just sent an upgraded proposal. They are ready to sign today. Laura saw the text and went pale. She knew that with a single nod from Marcus, Harborview Crown would lose not only the contract, but a reputation it had spent decades building. Marcus locked the screen and said, "The final condition is that this system must change the way it operates." Ethan tilted his head, not fully understanding. Marcus opened the last page of the packet. A bold heading read, 3-level cultural transformation model. 1 organizational level, reforming, training, reporting and evaluation. 2 management level, personal accountability and transparency. 3 community level, restoring relationships with those harmed. Marcus spoke slowly and clearly, as if reciting a pledge before an international summit. I want Harborview not only to apologize to me, I want this hotel to apologize to the people who have been treated the way I was. Kelly's eyes widened. You mean you want me to apologize to each person? Marcus answered without hesitation. Yes. Frank sucked in a breath. Ethan's eyes went wide. Laura even had to put a hand on the table to steady herself. I want you to reach out to the people who filed complaints, the people you made things difficult for, the people this system humiliated. You will meet each one. You will listen to each story. And you will apologize. His voice was not loud, not threatening yet. It felt like a slap straight to Kelly's soul. Her breathing turned shallow. I do not know who they are, the public. Does, Marcus replied. Social media will find them for you. Out in the lobby, Jasmine was streaming to 40,000 people. The ability to find witnesses was not in question. Laura studied Marcus for a long moment. She realized this was not a typical chief executive. This was a leader who used power to apply pressure not to destroy, but to rebuild. Someone who could turn a painful moment into fuel for transformation. Mr. Reed, she said, her voice carrying real weight. If we accept everything, will Summit Dynamics keep the contract? Marcus did not answer immediately. He looked out through the conference room, glass at the lobby, bathed in late afternoon light at Jasmine, narrating the story in real time at the witnesses who were now debating, reflecting, waking up. Then he turned back, his gaze deep and layered. I am not looking for perfection, he said. I am looking for commitment. One sentence yet, it was like opening a door none of them had dared to touch. Not Laura, not Ethan, not Frank, and not even Kelly. Laura slowly rose to her feet. We accept. She turned to Kelly. You will fully participate in Mr. Reed's program. Kelly nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not because she was being punished, but because, for the first time, she understood that the real consequence was not being scolded. It was having to face herself. Marcus closed his briefcase and walked out of the room. Jasmine swung the camera to follow him, the live stream crossing 50,000 viewers. Outside, as the door clicked shut, a new chapter for the service industry officially began. And Kelly Parker, the woman who once snapped her fingers at a black guest like he was beneath her, was now the very first person required to go through the transformation program Marcus had designed. All because of one moment in which she believed she had the right to define someone else's place. But Marcus Reed was the one holding the board. As the doors of the Windsor room opened and Marcus stepped back into the grand lobby, he was swallowed instantly by a sea of eyes. No one spoke, but the air was stretched tight like a violin string on the verge of snapping. Jasmine still held her phone high, her live stream now surpassing 60,000 viewers. A group of guests at the bar stood up the moment Marcus appeared. Evelyn Carter clasped her hands together as though praying for a just ending. Kelly followed behind him with swollen red eyes, and Laura approached with a look that blended determination with fear of what was coming next. Marcus's phone buzzed again, another message from Daniel. "The board is still waiting. If you need more time, I'll tell them to begin internal matters first." Marcus typed back quickly. "Give them 5 minutes. I'm coming up." He stood in the center of the lobby, like the axis of the universe, surrounded by people holding their breath. A familiar feeling rose in him, the awareness that every word he was about to speak would send ripples across a wide surface. Not the ripples of retaliation, but the ripples of responsibility, of change, of choosing between preserving what was broken and breaking it apart to rebuild something better. Laura stepped forward, voice soft but clear. "Mr. Reed, we have reviewed everything. We accept all terms in your proposal, every one of them." Marcus tilted his head slightly, acknowledging the effort but not yet granting full trust. "Good. But let me be clear about something. This is not a sentence. This is an opportunity." Kelly's throat tightened. Opportunity from a man she had publicly humiliated. She couldn't comprehend how anyone could remain this calm or this generous. Marcus took half a step forward. Light from the chandelier reflected across the glass walls and lit his face in a way that made several people realize they had misjudged him from the very first moment. "I require Harborview to implement 3 actions immediately," Marcus said, "and these will determine whether the contract remains." The crowd seemed to dip in unison as though bracing. First, Marcus declared, "You must adopt the full system reform program. No revisions, no reductions, no delays." Laura nodded instantly. "We're ready." Second, Marcus continued his gaze, shifting to Kelly. "The entire transformation process must be made public. Transparency is not for humiliation, but so those who were harmed know they were not forgotten." Kelly clenched her hands tightly. Every word felt like a mirror, showing her what she had refused to see. And finally, Marcus said slowly, his eyes cutting through the invisible divide prejudice had created for generations, Harborview must give those who were mistreated a chance to hear a real apology. An apology meant for healing, not for public relations. A wave of murmurs rippled through the lobby. Kelly bit her lip until it bled. This wasn't punishment. It was a journey. A familiar voice rose from behind Marcus. "You're absolutely right." Evelyn stepped forward, standing beside him, with the strength of someone representing every person who had ever lived through the same pain. "An apology opens the door of the heart," she said, looking directly at Kelly. "And you'll learn more than you think if you're willing to listen." Tears streamed slowly down Kelly's cheeks. Evelyn wasn't speaking with rage, but with the sadness of someone who had seen too many painful cycles repeat themselves. Laura took a deep breath. "Mr. Reed will fulfill all your conditions." But regarding Miss Parker herself, "Do you require any additional disciplinary?" Marcus raised his hand, stopping her with a gesture both gentle and absolute. "I don't want her punished." The entire lobby held its breath. "I want her changed, truly changed." Jasmine zoomed in on Marcus's face. Comments poured down like rain. "This is real leadership. No revenge. Respect. Class. This man is fixing an entire system without raising his voice." In that moment, Kelly stood, hands shaking. Her tears had run dry. All that remained was the exhaustion of someone seeing herself clearly for the first time. Her voice broke. "I want to say something." Every gaze turned to her. "I was wrong. Completely wrong. I have no excuse. I made you feel unwelcome in the very hotel I'm responsible for keeping safe and respectful. I hope I'll have a chance to make this right." Marcus studied her silently, not with anger, not with disdain, but with the eyes of someone trying to measure whether she truly understood the weight of what she had done. Jasmine leaned her phone closer. The livestream crossed 70,000 viewers. Finally, Marcus spoke. "A chance is not something I give you. A chance begins when you face yourself." Laura looked at Marcus with open admiration. "Mr. Reed, what you're showing is dignity-based leadership." Marcus offered a faint smile. "Real leadership begins when people matter more than reputation." Frank, who had stood silently the whole time, suddenly stepped forward. "Mr. Reed, I want to apologize. I should have asked more questions. I shouldn't have followed orders without thinking, but I was afraid. Afraid of losing my job. Afraid of making a mistake." Marcus turned to him, eyes steady. "No anger, only truth. Frank, leadership is not a rank. It's a choice. And today you have a chance to choose differently." Frank bowed his head deeply. The lobby fell silent. A small moment, but one carrying enormous weight. Jasmine turned to check the comments. Then her eyes widened. A major news outlet had joined the live stream. CNN was watching live. The hashtag Harbor View Incident had climbed to the top 3 nationwide. Laura realized time was slipping away. "Mr. Reed, you've heard our commitment. May I sign the agreement now to retain the contract?" Marcus checked his watch. 2:45 in the afternoon. He had 15 minutes to reach the boardroom. "Yes," he said. "I'll expect the signed copy within 90 minutes after my meeting." Laura nodded so forcefully, her shoulders shook. "You will have the signed agreement at exactly 4:30 this afternoon." Kelly lowered her head. Frank straightened his posture. Ethan let out a trembling breath of relief. Marcus walked toward the elevator. With each step, the crowd instinctively parted, not out of fear, but out of respect. As he stepped inside, Jasmine kept her camera trained on him. "Everyone," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "You're witnessing a moment where a man uses power, not to crush, but to rebuild an entire system." The elevator doors closed slowly. The live stream crossed 90,000 viewers. The entire hotel fell into stunned silence. And inside the elevator rising toward the conference floor, Marcus Reed knew the real battle was only just beginning. The elevator carried Marcus to the conference floor, each illuminated number on the panel beating like the pulse of a man about to step into a moment that would shift the course of his career. When the doors opened, the hallway was so quiet, the noise from the lobby below seemed to vanish entirely. No more murmurs, no cameras, no judging eyes, only responsibility and the moment he had been preparing for his entire professional life. The doors to the Skyline boardroom opened. All 11 members of the Summit Dynamics board were already seated. Their eyes turned toward Marcus in unison. A few nodded in greeting, some checked their watches, others looked puzzled by his rare delay. The chairman, Richard Collins, pushed his chair back and stood. "Marcus," he said, voice low, "everyone's wondering. What exactly happened down there?" Marcus stepped inside and closed the door behind him. For a brief moment, he felt the divide between this room and the world below. On this floor, power discussed numbers, plans, strategies. Below, people were fighting to be treated as human beings. And today the two worlds had collided with a force strong enough to make them inseparable. "There was an incident in the lobby," Marcus said calmly. "One involving a partner of ours, judging a guest based on bias." The board members exchanged glances, some brows tightening. Collins gestured for Marcus to continue. Marcus placed his briefcase on the table and opened it with the steady movement he'd repeated countless times. "Before we begin our meeting, I need the board to consider something critical. It concerns our corporate interests, our reputation, and the business ethics we stand for." He took out the reform program he had just presented to Harborview. "Today is the renewal date for our contract with Harborview Hospitality Group," Marcus said. "But we witnessed a severe discriminatory incident inside one of their hotels, and I issued conditions for the contract to continue." One board member raised a brow. "The diversity and training standards you prepared 3 weeks ago," Marcus nodded. "Yes." And Harborview agreed to all of it. A quiet ripple passed through the room. Another member said, "That will force the entire industry to adjust to our standards." "Exactly," Marcus replied, voice deep and commanding. "That is the goal." Silence spread across the room, respectful alert. The sharp minds at the table recognized that Marcus had not come to react. He had come to lead. Collins folded his arms. "So what do you want from us next, Marcus?" Marcus looked around the room. "I want Summit Dynamics to apply this dignity standard to every vendor, not just Harborview." A few members tilted their heads, but no one objected. Marcus continued. "We work with 17 hotel chains, 43 restaurants, and 12 conference centers. If we require them all to meet these standards, the national customer service landscape will shift." Collins exhaled slowly, as though seeing the entirety of Marcus's strategy unfold. "So you're using this incident as the catalyst to shift the entire industry," he said. Marcus replied, "I'm not using the incident. I'm using our power. Power must serve a purpose." The statement made several board members nod. Catherine Liu, the senior strategy director, spoke up. "I support it. We can't stand aside when this happened inside a partner facility. We need a strong message." Collins surveyed the room. All in favor of implementing the Dignity Standard program across all vendors. Hands rose one after another. No hesitation. The decision passed unanimously. A current ran down Marcus's spine, not satisfaction, but the feeling of someone who had just opened a door far larger than the one in the hotel lobby. The meeting shifted to quarterly reports, capital analysis, expansion strategies, and upcoming events, but no one in the room forgot what had just happened. Marcus delivered his briefing with clarity, and each time he spoke, the board members looked at him with a mix of pride and deep respect. When the meeting ended, Collins placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You know," he said, "not every chief executive uses power to create change like that. I've worked with many leaders, but you see differently." Marcus smiled faintly. "This isn't about me. It's about the respect every person deserves." Collins nodded. "You did the right thing." Marcus left the room with one goal: finish what he started. He entered the elevator. When the doors opened again, the sound from the lobby rushed upward, a mix of whispers, camera clicks, and the echo of Jasmine's livestream coming from guests' phones. He stepped out, just as an employee hurried toward him. "Mr. Reed," he said, breathless. "Ms. Whitman, the regional director, is waiting for you. The agreement is ready." Marcus nodded and walked toward the reception desk where Laura stood holding a stack of papers. Kelly stood a short distance away, looking hollow as if she'd survived an emotional storm. Frank stood straighter than before, newly aware of the role he played in the system. Ethan looked anxious, but strangely energized, a spark of purpose now visible in his eyes. Laura handed over the agreement, her voice trembling with determination. "Mr. Reed, here is the signed commitment. The full program begins Monday." Marcus reviewed each page carefully. When he reached the final page he signed, the lobby exhaled collectively, though no one realized they'd been holding their breath. Jasmine aimed her camera at him, her live stream now exceeding 100,000 viewers. She narrated everyone you're watching history, a hotel changing its entire system because of a moment of discrimination, and the person leading that change is the same man who was treated the worst at the start. Marcus closed his pen and looked at Laura. "Do this seriously, not for the contract, for the people." Laura nodded firmly. "We will." Marcus turned to Kelly. She didn't dare lift her head. Ms. Parker Marcus said softly, "Remember, no one is defined by their mistakes, only by how they choose to fix them." Kelly broke down again, but this time the tears were those of someone who knew she had to rebuild herself. Marcus walked toward the exit, and the lobby parted around him. No one spoke. No one looked away. They had just witnessed a rare kind of power, the power to turn humiliation into transformation, the power to make an entire system reflect on itself, the power to rebuild a culture. Jasmine's live stream ended at 112,000 live viewers. A wave had been set in motion, and it was far from over. News waits for no one. By the time Marcus stepped out of the Harborview Crown lobby, the shockwave had already spread faster than his stride. Outside the hotel, a local news van had pulled up to the entrance. A reporter, touching up her makeup, asked her cameraman, "Did you get the live stream clip loaded into the system now?" On Twitter, the hashtag #HarborView incident shot to #1 in 12 minutes. More than 30 online articles were published within the first hour. Major networks began running ticker headlines. Black CEO discriminated against at five-star hotel. His response forces an entire industry to change. Inside the elevator, taking Marcus down to the parking garage, he glanced at his phone screen, hundreds of messages and emails flooding in. Internal PR sent an urgent alert, CNN, requesting interview. MSNBC reached out, Forbes asking for comment. Daniel texted, "Do you want to speak to the press?" Marcus replied, simply, "Action first, words later." As he exited the hotel, a group of strangers recognized him and rushed over. "Mr. Reed, you're the CEO, right? I watched the whole live stream." Marcus nodded politely. A middle-aged woman placed her hand over her heart and said, voice trembling, "Thank you for doing what so many of us never dared to do." He smiled, just a small smile, but enough to make her burst into tears. Meanwhile, inside the lobby the mood had completely shifted. A receptionist whispered to a colleague, "We just witnessed a turning point for the whole industry." A guest told her friend, "I always thought discrimination was something vague until today." And Kelly, the person who had stood at the center of the chaos, sat in a corner with both hands covering her face. The harsh words on the live stream didn't crush her nearly as much as Evelyn's message that she had been hurting people without even realizing it. For the first time in her years of management, she understood that her authority could wound people with a single gesture, a single snap of her fingers, and that those wounds could accumulate into invisible scars on hundreds of lives. Ethan approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You holding up?" Kelly shook her head silently. Ethan continued, "You have a real chance to change, Kelly. Not everyone gets a chance like this." Kelly sobbed Ethan. "If you knew the things I've done, the times I doubted people, the times I made staff treat guests strictly just because they didn't look like the right type. I've been wrong so many times." Ethan sat beside her. "Mistakes don't define a person. You have to choose. Either you face it, or it consumes you." At the reception desk, Laura was on the phone with the headquarters. She had to explain the entire situation to Harborview's senior leadership board. The voice on the other end was stern. "If Marcus Reed moves the contract to Lakeside Regency, we lose almost $11 million in corporate revenue. We'll face legal fallout, media storms, stock decline." Laura answered wearily, "I know. But I believe if we do this right, this could become an opportunity for transformation." The board went quiet for several seconds, then said, "We're giving you full decision-making authority. Don't let this company collapse because of this incident." Laura exhaled long and deep. She understood the weight of the agreement she'd just signed. The partnership with Summit Dynamics would reshape not only this hotel, but all 57 Harborview locations nationwide. Training costs would skyrocket. Staff would push back media scrutiny, would intensify, executives would panic. But she also knew that if they didn't do it, the entire chain's future would crumble. Across the city, inside Summit Dynamics headquarters, the PR team gathered around a large screen, rewatching the livestream clip. A young staffer wiped her eyes. How does he lead like that? Calm as water, but strong as steel. The PR director smiled softly. That's why he's the CEO. At other Summit Dynamics partner, companies' emergency emails went out. Summit will soon implement new standards across all vendors. Begin internal review immediately. A hotel in New York held an emergency meeting. A restaurant in Dallas called its legal team to review bias policies. A conference center in Seattle prepared immediate training sessions. The domino effect had begun. At a nearby cafe, Evelyn sat with Jasmine and her granddaughter Leah, a blogger who specialized in real-world stories. Leah opened her laptop and typed the first line of her new article, "When Power Meets Purpose, the Story of Marcus Reed." Evelyn sipped her tea, looking out the window. "Sweetheart," she said, "don't forget the most important thing. This isn't about shaming anyone. It's about helping people look inward and grow." Jasmine rested her chin on her hand, thinking, "I've never seen a live stream spread this fast. But I don't want it to just go viral. I want it to mean something." Evelyn smiled. "And you've already done that." He didn't seek the spotlight. The spotlight found him because he did what was right. Meanwhile, Kelly remained frozen in the lobby. Guests, staff, and even people who had quietly disliked her now looked at her with a mix of pity and a question. Could she truly change? Laura approached, placing the signed agreement gently on the table in front of her. "You're the first person in this transformation program," she said. "Kelly, I don't want to fire you. I want you to be part of the change." Kelly's voice cracked. I don't know if I can." Laura looked directly into her eyes. "You can, because if Marcus believes in second chances, then we must believe too. Kelly broke into uncontrollable tears. But this time, no one looked at her like someone to blame. They looked at her like someone standing in the most honest moment of her life. At that same time, Marcus stepped out of the Harborview Crown building into the golden glow of the late afternoon sun. The cold wind brushed against his cheek, but he didn't shiver. He knew he had just opened a door, not just for Kelly, or for Harborview, or for Summit Dynamics, but for thousands of people who had stayed silent while being mistreated. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from his mother. "I saw everything. You did the right thing." Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second. A single warm tear rose, not from pain, not from exhaustion, but from hope. Hope that today would be the catalyst for something far larger. He took a deep breath, pocketed his phone, and continued walking, leaving behind a hotel poised between collapse and rebirth. And ahead lay a service industry beginning to tremble because of a story that started with a single dismissive snap of fingers. But its ending would be a movement. 3 months had passed since the day the Harborview Crown Hotel shook under the weight of what the world now called the Marcus Reed incident. But walking into the lobby today no longer carried tension or hesitation. The atmosphere had changed. The staff had changed. Even the way they looked at guests had transformed. And that transformation began with the very person who triggered the crisis, Kelly Parker. Kelly returned after the 90-day immersion program with a thinner face, but an expression marked by depth and clarity. She had met 12 families who had faced discrimination in the service industry. She had spent hours sitting silently in workshops about the impact of unconscious bias. She had listened to stories that made her chest ache, and she finally realized that what she once called procedure had been barriers blocking the dignity of others. In her final report, she wrote, "I used to think I was being fair. But fairness is not colorblind. Fairness is seeing differences and respecting at them." Ethan was officially promoted to Assistant General Manager for the competence and compassion he showed throughout the crisis. Frank, the security guard who once bowed his head in shame, now led the hotel's new security and guest respect training team. He told new hires, "Power isn't in the radio on your belt, it's in how you see people." The hotel's feeling welcomed rating rose by 23%. Many guests returned specifically to experience the new Harborview. Jasmine's livestream topped 2.3 million views, turning her into a rising face in social justice media. And at the Summit Dynamics office, whenever someone hesitated over a difficult decision, they would ask each other, what would Marcus do? When summer arrived, the story at the Harborview Crown had grown far beyond a single incident. It became material for training sessions, the topic of research papers, and even a point of discussion at corporate conferences about human dignity. Summit Dynamics officially implemented its new standards across its entire vendor network, forcing dozens of companies to reevaluate their procedures and internal cultures. A wave of reform swept through the service industry. Kelly Parker now stood at the front of workshops on unconscious bias. She did not hide her mistakes. She told them as reminders of how easily power can hurt people. Many who listened to her did so with a respect she had never received before, not because of her title but because of her honesty. Evelyn Carter wrote a speech for the local school, calling Marcus the person who reminds us that change does not begin with anger, but with purpose. Jasmine continued her work in social justice journalism, telling many new stories, yet always calling that day's live stream the day my eyes opened. As for Marcus, he declined most interview requests. In an internal meeting, he said only one sentence: "Leadership is not about commanding. Leadership is about elevating." Those who heard him nodded because they understood he was not speaking about contracts, he was speaking about people. And from that moment on, one question became the unofficial motto of the service world. When you face injustice, what will you do? Will you look away? Or will you be the one who begins the change? From the perspective of an expert in leadership and organizational culture, Marcus Reed's journey reveals an essential truth. Power only has meaning when it is used to lift others, not to push them down. A single word can cause harm, but the right decision at the right moment can shift an entire system. The changes at the Harborview Crown are not merely the victory of one individual, but proof that when ethics lead the way, a business can grow through its own decency. If this story resonates with you, be sure to like and subscribe so you can join us as we explore more inspiring stories. And before you leave the video, leave a short comment, just a simple phrase, a reminder of human dignity. Act right.